Scroll of Thoth, episode 27, July 26th, 2015. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey guys, happy July.
It is July. These podcasts have been a little bit more space in between. Not quite monthly anymore, but I'm okay with it because I think we've been getting better guests and better shows together. What do you think?
You mean we're a little bit chaotic?
Something like that. Speaking of which, our guest for this show is Dave Lee, who is a chaos magician, author, breath coach, and probably the longest serving member of the Illuminates of Thanateros. How you doing, Dave?
Hi there, yeah.
So we're going to throw out our softball, our first easy question that we always do. How did you get involved in magic?
Wow, that's one of those really good questions that's got a lot of history to it. Basically, I remember the first time that I gave up magical thinking as a child. I was stood with my father, and I must have been around 4. He's asking me what I want for my birthday. And I say, I want a magic wand, a real magic wand, like Sooty's got, one that can do real magic. And he informed me at that stage, being a responsible adult, that there were no such things as real magic wands, that magic wasn't real. And I don't remember any sort of crushing sense of disappointment, but I do vividly remember the entire scene, standing facing a row of shops, me holding his hand. And, you know, it was just this moment. And the next... What became of my mind then is that I went into science. I saw it maybe as an alternative. I don't know how I saw it, but it was a passion. It was the quest for knowledge and the ability to do something in life. You know, power, if you like, ability. I'm just going to briefly pause now and say that that background noise has become overwhelmingly loud again.
Hold on just a sec. Is that your laptop fan?
It could be.
Can we turn that off? Do you know which USB plug I pull?
There's one with a wire going around toward the back.
Right, well, I can't hear you at all now. I can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay.
That's much better. That's much cleaner.
And if you try
All right. You were saying shop window, you got into science.
Yeah. And basically, so I abandoned...
Damn it.
I can't... Oh, I couldn't hear you, and then I could for a moment. You speak again.
I think I got a bad connection.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like a Verizon commercial.
And it cut out again. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Okay, let's do this one more time.
What, from the science bit or from the beginning?
Yeah, from the science bit. I can cut that out.
Okay, yeah. Well, so yes, I got totally fascinated by science. You know, in my youth, it was the space race and all of that. But and I ended up getting a science degree. But that's in between. In my teens, I took a lot of acid, and then my scientific worldview started breaking apart. Basically, I could see that while science had its own say and a very good say in its own area, there were whole areas of human experience that had been abandoned in order to get the science project going. And but I went ahead anyway, and took 2 years of intense psychedelic experience. Then I went and got a science degree, and it was only after that. So I was kind of alternating between science and magic throughout my youth, and then I started in my mid-20s. I started on regular magical practice. the noise is starting again. It's not as bad yet, but it's just beginning to rise.
That happens to be my air conditioner turning on.
That's all right now. It's gone again.
Weirdness. Okay, we're gonna have to live with that noise. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I was alternating between beliefs in magic and science until my mid-20s, and then I came across. I started doing meditation and just exploring my own mind a bit and what it could do. Went along to some magical group meetings, occult group meetings at Leeds University Union, where I was a postgraduate student, and through those I came into contact with chaos magic, which very much had a lot of its early days in Leeds, where I was a postgrad student. And here, chaos magic was a magical scheme or magical belief or set of beliefs that didn't try and pretend that science wasn't there, or didn't try and warp it into some silly shape. And it didn't require that you had some prior metaphysical belief, like it seemed to me all the other stuff I'd looked at in magic and mysticism did. So all of a sudden I found something which was suitable for my, my skeptical mind.
Yeah, it does seem that so many of the early chaos magicians, leaders in it, have a science background. And yeah, that's an interesting thing that chaos magicians don't leave that out.
Well, yeah, to me that's really central. Whilst science isn't everything, and I really despise scientism or parascience, two words that have come to mean taking science as a religion. For instance, Professor Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, I would call him a dogmatic advocate of scientism or parascience. In other words, he believes that science can say things outside of its own area, of its own proper discourse. He believes it can say things about life in general, and I believe that is a really stupid view. We take what we need from science, but we don't allow it to outgrow its, to overstep its own boundaries. That's my attitude to it, and I think chaos magic fits in with that, whereas most other magical schemes are blinkered about science, I think.
So you recently did a talk on the history of the IoT. Maybe give us a brief sum up of how did the IoT start out?
Well, it was first announced in a magazine called The New Equinox in 1978. That's the IoT was first announced, I think, 2 or 3 years before the term chaos magic came into existence. 1978, there's a magazine run by a guy called Ray Sherwin, who wrote a couple of small booklets on magic, which became known as chaos magic in those early days. And Pete Carroll started to write articles for it, and eventually there was an announcement of this thing called the IoT, the Illuminats of Thanateros. And the idea of it was that it was for people who weren't as much interested in symbolic systems, but were interested in technical mastery of their own minds, their own nervous systems, if you like, and then seeing what magic could be done from that. And of course, it was cast in a very glamorous way. If you look at that first advert, it's I can't remember the whole thing, but it's kind of, the Illuminats of Thanateros is a fusion of the sorceries of Tao and Zos and Tantra and all this kind of thing. So it sounded tremendously romantic at that age. So yes, you had that people who were not very interested in the sad old Masonic structures of the magical orders that were going on at the time, and didn't think much of the symbol systems involved. You had to learn a symbol system and then navigate your way around it before actually doing any real magical work. So the small group of people were writing these things and producing this small corpus of works. In 1978, the first edition of Liber Null came out. It's by Pete Carroll, the first chaos magic book. Even though not until the second edition of it, 2 or 3 years later, 80 or 81, was it actually called chaos magic. But the basic approach was there. I think it's worth saying at this point that some people say, oh, chaos magic, you can't define chaos magic, man, it's everything, it's all sorts of things. That's rubbish, basically. Chaos magic has got a very simple theoretical core. and its theoretical core is twofold. You need two things to do magic. You need an altered state of consciousness of some sort. In other words, you need to be a bit more sensitive and a bit more encompassingly aware of your own state, perhaps, not in just your ordinary mundane mind. And secondly, and more importantly, you need a shift of belief. In other words, chaos magic was the first magical scheme that recognized the importance of belief. And as such, it means that you can pretty much start from anywhere, pretty much any belief system you like, pretty much any idea you like, and you can get magic out of it. So this kind of appealed to a small number of people in the late 70s. There was a group in the mid-70s, the immediate precursor of the IoT was a group that Pete Carroll founded, which was known as the Stoke Newington Sorcerers, after an area of London they all lived in. There was a few people who later became famous who were in that, like Charlie Brewster and Gerald Suster, both unfortunately dead now. The IoT itself, announced in 1978, and it was really for about 9 or 10 years, it was only a few dozen people probably. It was quite a small network of people. And then with the announcement of the Pact of the IoT in 1987, it started to become a lot larger and reached its current kind of size.
All right. So what I'd like to hear, and you can jump in with questions too if you like, what keeps you in the IoT? What's appealing to the organization for you?
It's funny, that's another good question. It's the one I kind of ended my talk on the other week, because being the longest serving person in the IoT, ask that question, why am I still in it? I think for a lot of people it's a bit like a university. We've got a very, very good training system for basic magic, and another one for slightly more advanced, our 4th degree and 3rd degree programs, novice and 4th degree programs if you like. And sometimes people go through that, they stay for a few years, they get some magical experience, and then quite a lot of people leave. There's a flow through. Numbers don't increase or decrease greatly. Some people just like to stick around, and I have really. I mean, using the university analogy, I'm like permanent staff. I mean, I really care about the organisation and
you've got tenure.
The people, it's a bit like that. I'm stuck with it, And some people, of course, are not lifetime magicians. They study magic for a few years, and then something else in their life takes over. I'm one of the rare lifers. I'm in magic for the full run, for the whole of my life, I think, and it's a basis of my way of looking at reality. So that's why I'm still here, and I just love the stuff we do. I think the IoT is very much about group magic. If you get the basic ideas of chaos magic and you want to work alone, then the IoT training system could, help you at certain points, but it's not really probably what you're looking for. In my experience, the most interesting magics I've done, most of them have been group magics. So that's why I'm still in it. I just love doing this stuff.
I'm not a chaos magician at all, although I do have some interest in it.
Yes, she is.
And okay, well, I don't identify as one.
Okay.
But I'm fascinated by your continuing reference to training systems.
Okay, well, the basic training system we have is now contained in a book called The Book, I think. I think it's that edition that's come out. It's all there in Pete Carroll's first book, Liber Null. There's a subsection of that book called Liber MMM, which is a 6-month training scheme that we still use basically almost unaltered, except that we've rewritten it in order to avoid any copyright problems with Pete Carroll's publishers. And it's now around as the book. And basically this is taking the basic skills of what we think are necessary for magic. A lot of it is very similar to some of the Crowley training. So you've got to be able to learn to sit still. You've got to be able to learn to pay attention to your breath current. You've got to be able to learn to pay attention to the current of your thoughts. I mean, that's asana, pranayama, pratyahara, basic training. Beyond that, you need to learn visualization to be able to visualize steadily enough such that even when you're assaulted by a storm of impressions, like in intense emotion or in an interesting altered state, you can still focus on what it is that is the lever for the magic you're doing. So that's that side of it. Then we also think it's important that people gain access to their dream plane. So we encourage the keeping of a dream diary and work towards some lucid dreaming to understand the existential freedom that produces. There's a few other things, obviously basic divination, basic enchantment, how to do simple spells like sigils. Obviously chaos magic has become famous for the sigil thing because it's such a simple, portable method of doing magic, mantras, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, basic enchantment, divination, all the basic sitting training stuff, enchantment, divination, dream work, that, and metamorphosis, making changes in your own daily habits. That pretty much covers the main points of the Liber MMM program. So we expect people to do that every day for 6 months, at least 6 months, and provide a diary on it. Some people choose to take longer, they may even take years over it, but there has to be one 6-month period, which is every day there's something recorded. This challenges the person to be self-disciplined and to take command of their own mind, really. Once people, that's the going, when you approach the IoT, you come in as a novice, and you've got that 6 months or more training work as a novice. Then you get your neophyte initiation, which is a 4th degree, and then there's a training program from there if you want to go on to the 3rd degree. That training program is really just a case of broadening out your magical experience. You'll be expected to experience invoking gods and spirits, evoking servitors and spirits, running group rituals, taking on Baphomet or a similar Gnostic entity in a possession trance. So really rounding out all the basic magical stuff you're going to need to do group magic, and that's another year. Beyond that, we don't have specific training programs. We did have one for a while, but now it's just regarded as a set of guidelines, because the higher grades in the IoT are largely administrative anyway. They're not considered to be in themselves proofs of magical ability or anything like that.
Would you consider taking on a spirit like Baphomet that about the same as channeling?
Yes, but people who take on Baphomet don't tend to write all the drivel and rubbish that channelers do. I think that's the main difference. It's very much like it, yeah, but I mean, most channel stuff is, to coin a phrase, shit, isn't it? Let's face it. It's
well, I was actually thinking
philosophy.
when you channel spirit rather than somebody who's writing a book.
Yeah. No, I think the channeling, my unease with the word channeling comes from the way that it's been employed. So many awful New Age things, like that dreadful book, of course, in Miracles and things like that. You know, garbage like that. They claim, if people had more courage, they claim they wrote it themselves, not channeled it. But yes, actual channeling in the sense of being conscious, but as if your own consciousness has been pushed to one side, and there's something much bigger running the show, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I think you kind of nailed it. The difference between channeling is there's still a part of you there, and I think a full-blown invocation, you really tend to just lose yourself entirely.
Yeah, I know what you mean. In the Neo-African traditions like Voodoo, it's considered apparently, you know, if one of the Loa ride you during a ceremony, it's not considered good form to try and remember what happened even. You know, it's considered that you have been completely taken over by that Loa at that time. And it's, you shouldn't question it, you shouldn't try and remember what happens. I have seen people go under in various situations and come back with apparently very little memory of what happened, but you never really know to what extent that's the person's personal theatre. You know, whether they needed to frame it like that, because clearly in a Haitian village, the whole community is involved in the descent of the gods into people. And so it is really, really important to have a common framework for how you deal with that. Whereas, of course, in a chaos magic organization, we have a common framework which is experimental and goes no further than that. So I think it would be true to say that, yeah, what you just said is right. There's a spectrum of degree of possession. I'm not sure I've ever seen a completely kind of submerged possession trance like would happen in a voodoo ritual, proper voodoo ritual.
When I channel in ritual for people that I know, I ask not to remember anything because I don't want to know about their private situations or lives.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't think we should really deride that theater aspect because, fake it till you make it is kind of a chaos magic axiom.
Or any magic axiom.
Yeah. So I think that's perfectly legitimate for those people who are pushing themselves and trying to come to that experience.
Yeah. No, I take the point you made there about not wanting to know what the querents asked and so forth. I mean, I don't think I could achieve that. I've never had a trance of that kind, and I think it would probably go against the way my magical spirits work. But I do, yeah, I appreciate it, and I think that's a really good way to do it if you do that kind of channeling.
So, what can you say about the modern day structure of the IoT? What would you say to someone who said, "I want to join"?
Well, I'd say I would assume that the person would have found out a little bit about it because we've got websites and we've got a presence on Facebook and so forth. So I'd assume that they want to come into it because they want to be involved in group magic. And I would say to them, this is, well, that's it really. They know all that there is to know if they know that they're going to be involved in group magic. And that would be their motivation. So I would just advise them to get on with the work. To get on with their own work and stay in touch with us.
All right. I pretty much recently went through my novitiate. It was last year that I finished it. And, it's weird for me, from what I would say is, in some aspects, it's really easy. It was things I had done before. I had already worked with Liber Null, so none of it was a mystery to me in that respect. But at the same time, that dedication, that no matter how tired, no matter how fucked up my day was, I was going to do magic and write about it no matter what. And that's not easy.
No, it's not. It really isn't. No. There's always some fucked up day when you really feel like you could do without it, isn't there? Yeah.
But I was kind of interested in you saying that there is a training program for 4th degree, because I haven't been told that.
So a training program for what?
For the 4th degree of the IoT.
Oh, well, yeah. There's something that it's just the neophyte initiate training scheme. I mean, it's something that we put it together in the British Isles section, but I'm sure that the American section has something very similar. I mean, I can't discuss any of these details, of course, in a public thing like this, but yeah.
I think he just wants to know where he goes to find it because he hasn't been introduced to it.
Nobody's told me anything, and they just said, "Yeah, now you're initiated. Do what the hell you want."
Your local administrator will be able to tell you.
I'll have to get with my MT about that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about what the IoT has become?
I love what it's become, actually. I think there's been a number of struggles and a few splits in the past. I mean, you must have heard of the Ice War, and there were other lesser kind of splits during the 90s. But
well, go ahead and tell us about the Ice War.
Well, yeah, okay. But by and large, I was going to say, just to complete what I was saying, by and large, we're pretty much at peace internally now. Not to the extent that it's boring. There's still disagreements, but at least we managed. We do manage to function. So I very much like what it's turned into. the Ice War, that's what Pete Carroll called the schism that was led by Ralph Tegmeyer in 1990. And basically, Pete was running the organization worldwide after it became the Pact in 1987, became the magical pact of the Illuminates of Thanateros, not just the Illuminates of Thanateros. It became much more highly organized at that time and started taking the grade system seriously, which they hadn't really before, because there weren't really enough people to make it worth bothering. He had the person who was in charge of the German section of the IoT was a gentleman called Ralph Tegmeyer, who has been on the magical scene in the German-speaking world for quite a while as an initiate of the Fraternitas Saturni, for instance, and probably other organizations as well. And he came under the sway of a martial arts adept, a guy called Helmut, who had some kind of country house where he had all these acolytes lined up in tents on the lawn, extremely authoritarian martial training kind of thing. And some people from the IoT visited and went along as guests and realized that this guy Helmut did have something to teach. He was a truly extraordinary adept of what you might call esoteric martial arts and projection of energy, all that kind of thing. He had stories about him throwing someone, like a martial arts type throw, but a few yards away, things like that. But extremely authoritarian. So Tegmeyer thought that was okay. He came up with this magical curriculum called Ice Magic, which was a very authoritarian magical curriculum where he wanted to align everything with what Helmut was doing. Pete says absolutely no way. This organization is not about this kind of authoritarian rubbish. So they had a big head-to-head in 1990, and it ended with, of course, Tegmeyer leaving, taking most of the German members with him. And yeah, that was the Ice War, 1990 to 91. You can read about it online. Pete wrote a little piece about it. Oh, when you did that to the microphone, it produced the most astonishing roaring.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, I've been trying to mute it when you're speaking so we get less background noise.
Right. Oh, it's coming up again.
Yep. So
it's hot and muggy here in Indiana,
yeah,
and so the AC's running.
The weather is horrible, so we've got
okay.
AC running.
Right. You got storms.
Yeah. So after that, IoT kind of had some split up, and obviously, I would say from my personal perspective that having some kind of authoritarian structure within the IoT would have just strangled it.
Yeah. No, I think Pete did exactly the right thing there. He had to make sure that the IoT wasn't permanently kind of warped out of shape by adherence to that kind of ideology. I think that sort of magical ideology. So it was, but he of course resigned the year after as head of the IoT, and other people had to step in to take his place. And yeah, but basically the IoT grew grew in strength after that.
The one thing that's kind of I find different about the IoT is there's no real recruiting going on. Either you kind of come to us and you want to do it, or we don't really care. Do you feel that's the case, or is there kind of a middle there?
Kind of. I mean, it's kind of the case, and that's kind of basically, I think that what matters to us is not to become a big organisation. You get to, we don't want to become the OTO, because the OTO is, to my mind, a massively inferior organisation, even though it's probably 20 times the size of the IoT, well, certainly 10 times. Because I'd rather just the people that really want to work our kind of magic find us and work with us. I'm not bothered about us becoming super large. So in that sense, we're not bothered about recruitment. On the other hand, it is important to have a presence out there so that people who've never come across you before can come across you, and sort of that jolt of recognition can happen, and that they're then drawn into our orbit. And I think we have a Facebook page called the Official IoT Facebook page, which is emphatically not anything to do with being a member of the IoT. It's just people that want to talk about that kind of stuff on Facebook. So obviously people come through things like that. We do have public events from time to time. We did them a lot in London in the 90s. We had one every year through until the late 90s, I think, started breaking up a bit. We've only had one since the turn of the century. We had one in 2008, Colours of Chaos. Yeah, some kind of public thing. We had a similar event in Spain a few months ago because we just started spreading the evil tentacles of our influence into Iberia. And so we had a one-day workshop, series of workshops in Bilbao, which I went over for, which was a blast, which was absolutely amazing. So we still have some public presence, and of course, if people hear about chaos magic or hear about this kind of magic or hear about Pete Carroll, they only have to, go to their browser, and they'll pretty quickly find something. So I don't think we're holding people too far at a distance. Whoa!
Yeah, the
roaring
of the wind is back.
In my experience, virtually anybody who lists themselves under the umbrella of paganism in one way or another does not proselytize. So I don't think it's unique to the IoT. But
the OTO can get a little. You show up for one of their meetings, and it's like, they want your $93 and.
See, they've never treated me that way.
Sign on the line.
But at any rate, I did have a question about the demographics of your members. Talking to James, it sounds to me like much of the OTO that it's very highly male, which is kind of different than most of the other flavors of paganism.
I didn't say that.
I didn't say you said that. I said I got the impression.
Ah. Are we a sausage fest?
Yeah. I get the impression the OTO is largely male. I don't know whether it's still like that. I mean, back in the day when I was first getting into magic, the whole Thelemic scene that I could see was certainly 90% male. And the magical groups I went along to were like that as well, just more open-ended sort of magical groups. In fact, the first ever IoT group, which ran from 1980 to 1982 in UK, in Britain, in Yorkshire, when we dissolved the group in Beltane 82, we did so with a ritual in the woods where we buried a copper pantacle that had been dedicated to the female influence in the IoT, because we recognized that the reason why magical orders had, we thought at the time that magical orders had so few women because of their sort of tired old Masonic structures, basically. So we thought, okay, we'll try and get beyond that in some way. When the next group formed, which was 84, so it's 2 years later, the next IoT group formed, it was about 50-50 men and women, so I think the magic had worked there. And I'm not quite sure what the difference is. Maybe it's just something to do with the vibe of Crowley cast over the whole thing. I'm not against Crowley. I think to be against Crowley, you've got to be a damn good magician. You know what I mean? He's been such a brilliant influence in many ways, but everything he founded was, very much part of that old patriarchy, and I think that probably still hangs over to some extent.
If it says anything to the success of your ritual, I don't know if I'm supposed to be revealing this, but I'm doing it anyway. Our recent census here in North America, we just hit a 50-50 parity with male and female. So
but demographics is bigger than sex. And is it mostly as much of paganism is European descent, reasonably highly educated people? I mean, these are the kind of people that I come across in most pagan circles.
I'll let you field that for the UK.
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure what the question was in a way, but I mean, yeah, certainly highly educated people. If you want to get into detailed demographics, then we really are talking mainly about white-skinned people, probably between the ages of 25 upwards, mostly. There'll be a few younger people. Culturally, West Civ, basically Western liberal culturally, I'd say something like that. That noise is really bad at the moment.
Uh-oh. I'm going to kick things down here a little bit.
The AC's not on now, so it must be something else.
All right.
That's much better.
All right. And I think I've witnessed the same thing here, that it's pretty much run like that. Not a lot of people of color, a few, and culturally Western for the vast majority. I don't know if there needs to be a conscious need to change that, or if there needs just, or just wait. I don't know.
How would you change it? How would you go about changing it? I don't even. I mean, sorry.
That's all right. So much of it comes out of a Western tradition. I mean, you're saying, Crowley, he was a part of the patriarchy, and he continued that forward. And, with the IoT being the further evolution, as I think Pete Carroll kind of phrased it, of that kind of organization, we're still carrying some of that baggage, and I don't know if there's anything you can do about it.
Well, I think we're all still carrying some of that baggage, aren't we? If we educate our children well, then they will grow up carrying a little less of it. But of course, everybody's got baggage. They'll end up with some different baggage. I don't think you can make the world a right merely by being inclusive. I think inclusiveness is important, and I don't see, I see the IoT as an inclusive organization, basically. If people don't want to come to it, then that's not necessarily our problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're holding anyone back or telling them not to come, or I would say even making them feel uncomfortable. It's just, this is what we've attracted.
Yeah.
So moving beyond the IoT, can you tell us about some of your own works? Tell us about the books that you have, and I'm especially interested in your novel.
Oh, okay. Well, I happen to have a copy right behind me because I've just been reading something off it onto. I'm trying to make it. I'm doing a YouTube thing with me reading bits of it. So there's one novel out at the moment. There's another that's complete, but I shall be issuing later this year, which is the prequel to this one. This is The Road to Fool. It's, if you want it, a sort of potted description of it. It's techno-magical flood world dystopia. So it's basically about magic, but it's about the magic being extended to more people and becoming much more powerful because of a new technology, a nanite that produces an alternative nervous system under the skin. And nearly everybody who tries to use this stuff, it will make them ill or even kill them. But there's a tiny minority of people that can use this stuff and become kind of super mages, as it were. And this
Where do I get mine?
I know, it's great, isn't it? I just like the idea of. I'm playing around with the ideas of, the sort of Penrose-Hameroff theory of consciousness, quantum collapse of neurotubules, all that sort of stuff. So that's the SF behind it. But basically, it's the story of a young man who grows up in flooded Britain. But Britain doesn't really exist any longer. The British Isles, the West Antarctic ice sheet has melted, and we have sea level rises of 200 meters. And Britain has just broken up into a series of islands. And so you've got the Highlands of the southwest England become the Kingdom of Wessex, the resurgence of a new royal lineage into the old Kingdom of Wessex. the Midlands, which is where, Midlands in the north, which is the part of England that I live in, we've got lots of hills as well, so we become another country, and then Scotland breaks down into two further countries. So there's four. Well, there's actually five, but one of them is secret, and nobody really knows about it until it enters the drama about halfway through. So it's this guy who's brought up in Wessex, and Wessex has been a relatively happy society, considering the levels of overcrowding and brutality and war that have followed the flooding of the world. But he's living in a relatively happy and privileged society that's beginning to break down, and he is involved in a bit of royal conspiracy, and he blunders into a thing that's happening within the royal family, and they exile him on pain of death. So he just wanders through these other nations. But he himself, it turns out, is more than he appears to be. He realizes that he is the son of the scientist who invented this nanite, and he's dragged into this guy's conspiracy, who's still alive at about nearly over 150 years old or something, and they throws all of the whole of the length of Britain have thrown into a new war against some monotheist fanatics called the Pure Light. They are based. They're a crossbreed of the worst of Christianity and the worst of Islam. The sort of people. You're the warrior caste in your country, the evil bastards who run the American war machine. They are the same people as the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, aren't they? They're the same. They're the same assholes.
Sure seems like us.
I don't know if the higher ups, if the money people actually really believe, or just use that belief to get the people to go along with it. I'm not sure.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I'm playing around with this idea. I'm imagining the worst, the most evil religious movement on the planet is a fusion of the worst of Christianity and the worst of Islam. It's called the Pure Light, and basically, there's a war, and the protagonist becomes the warlord who will save his people, but at great cost. So that's a very brief rundown of the novel.
And that's pretty widely distributed, isn't it? I think I've seen it on Amazon and other places.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.com and on .co.uk and on their European sites. Yeah.
Awesome. And what about your other work? I know you've worked on some other books about magic.
Yeah. Let's see what I've got to hand. See if I can drag something out of my box here to wave at the screen. Oh yeah, that's the one that I wrote this in Chaotopia. That's my first full-length book on magic as such. I wrote that in '97, but it got reissued by, I self-published it, but it got picked up by Mandrake of Oxford, reissued in 2005 or something. So there's that, which is available. This is my attempt to push chaos magic a bit further. I always really like the idea of the minimalism of chaos magic and the way that we are talking about this very, very small number of parameters that you need to attend to in order to do magic. The rest of it is kind of like just the icing on the cake. But I thought that because of Pete Carroll's character and his approach to magic, chaos magic had never had an equivalent critique of mysticism. And so this is half about sorcery and it's half about higher states of consciousness, seeing how far we can go with a chaos type critique of that sort of stuff. So it was trying to bring the inner worlds into it a bit more.
Awesome.
And sorry.
That's all right.
Then there was
that one's pretty widely distributed as well.
Yeah, that's available from Mandrake of Oxford. That's got. Oh, I keep going over this cable on my chair. I'll see if I can hook it over something. Then there's this book. I wrote the original edition of this back in '94. The second book I ever read, the Wealth Magic Workbook. And of course, because of its title, that's always been my best-selling book. Naturally, it's a guide for the semi-slacker. Basically, it's not about how to get rich. It's about how to live the life you need with few resources, only using magic to do so. So yeah, that's always been a good seller. And the other main ones are, I don't know whether, oh, here it is. I wasn't sure I got a copy of this in the house. Bright from the Well, that's you might or might not know. I'm also a member of the Rune Guild. I'm a member of about 5 esoteric organisations. I thought I'd go for the Discordian, quintuple agent thing, but there's only 2 that I work seriously within. Give a lot of time to, and that's the IoT and the Rune Guild. And I'm a master in the Rune Guild, and this book comes out of my master work, which is kind of like a thesis that you write in the Rune Guild when you get to that level. And this is basically taking quite a chaos magic modern sort of approach to the Norse myths, retelling some of them as short stories with my own spin in there, and alternating those chapters with chapters on essays on northern magic and essays on what it's like to be a chaos magician working in that tradition.
Yeah, when I put my own spin on the Norse myths, the Asatru around here really don't appreciate it.
Well, that's the thing about Asatru, you see. The Asatru people, they're religious, and so they take offense really easily. Fortunately...
Having said that, I work very heavily in the Asatru community, so...
Wow, cool. No, I mean, I've nothing against Asatru, but, I know that it is a religious thing. And religious people do easily take offence. The Rune Guild is not a religious organisation. It's not directly affiliated to Asatru at all, although, of course, there are some members who cross over between them. But it's very much more a magical organisation. It's about looking at the esoteric aspects of the old lore and re-energising those rather than re-energising the forms of the religion. So it's very different. The other, the other book. Anyway, while I'm doing books, a little booklet, tiny little thing. I think they're called chat books in the US, booklets in Britain, and that's a little booklet with a CD in the back, and it's a guide about connected breathwork. So nobody had ever written a sort of basic guide to connected breathwork before, so I thought I should do one.
Excellent. And you're also running a website now called Chaotopia. What do you have going on over there?
Well, that's always been my website for a long time for breathwork, but recently, this summer, I decided to extend what I'm doing online, and I've got an August program which starts next Sunday. I've got and then 2 weeks after that, and then 2 weeks after that. So 3 Sundays in August there'll be free online workings for people. One of them, well, 2 of them are workings. One of them is just a film. Like for instance, next weekend there's a working about bringing the surveillance state into discredit, which has already been done, and that's gradually going out more as a meme into the world. The weekend after that will be a film that I'm in the process of making from my talk in London on the history of the IoT 2 weeks ago. And so that'll be more like just going out in the evening and going to a talk. I'm expecting people to pour themselves a beer and sit around and chat for that one. It's not so serious. And then the third one will be a time travel path working that I did and released years ago, which I'm going to make freely available and work up some time travel work from that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the stuff on surveillance. A lot of people critique chaos magic as being very selfish, because it has no mystical or religious backing, so it's always about me. But I have never experienced a group of magicians doing more activist magic stuff to actually help the planet than chaos magicians. Has that been your experience?
That is exactly my experience, James. Yeah, I've found the IoT and chaos magicians in general to do more magic for the good of the world. And the only other groups I've come across that do anything like as much are some of the more radical and magically adept pagan groups. I use that widely because a lot of pagan groups are hopeless at magic, but there are some that are pretty good at it, and they've done work against animal cruelty and against all sorts of other issues, which I respect. But yeah, within the magical community, hardly anybody bothers doing anything except chaos magicians, I think.
Yeah, well, 15 years ago, I participated in a group that met on a regular basis that did environmental healing. So.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, there was a thing in Britain, which probably it might have been an international network called Dragon, back in the early 90s, that did lots of magical work against, or yeah, for the environment, against animal cruelty, all sorts of things like that. Often at sacred sites. And they were, and I met some of those people back in the late 80s, early 90s, some really competent, good people. Yeah.
And just
yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I just wanted to throw out a mention. Current group, the Knights of Chaos, Pete Carroll's group, that you can find out more about it at Arcanorium College, is another good example.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, Pete's got a group within Arcanorium College called the Knights of Chaos, which is a bunch of people who do, basically, they do magic for exactly the kind of thing we're talking about, you know, interfering on the world stage to try and make a better world.
All right. Is there anything that we missed? Any projects that you're working on right now that you wanted to talk about?
Let's have a quick look at my notes for today and see if there's anything I haven't mentioned yet. Not really, no. I mean, please, if you stick up my links and stuff, that I'd very much appreciate that. People want to go to my website, chaotopia.co.uk, then they'll find ways to get in touch with me there, and they'll find more details about all the events coming out this summer. And if you want to get on my mailing list, just email me at info@chaotopia.co.uk and take it from there.
Excellent. Yeah, we will have all those links on the website with the show notes. Thank you for talking to us. Did you have any more questions, Colleen? Did you want to throw something?
I've got lots more questions, but I think I'm going to have to do some reading first.
You have to.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
I invite everyone to come visit the website. It's scrollthoth.com. We have an Amazon search window there people can use to search for their Amazon products, and we get a couple pennies. We also have a PayPal button if anyone wants to donate. We ask $1 a show, which is a small price to pay. And we have a phone number if people want to call in and ask questions. That's 317-296-3247. Dave, did you have any social media you'd like people to know about?
any special what?
Social media, Facebook, or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at DLEEAHP, and I've mentioned my web address already. You can find me on Facebook, and those are the I mean, I use most of the social media. Those are the ones I use mainly.
Colleen?
Normal Facebook, that's the easiest way to get me. My email is wooglet@gmail.com. And next Saturday at 2 o'clock, we will be doing a public Lunasaw ritual here. So bring something to put in a stock pot, something harvest related.
Awesome.
Terrific.
Connect with me at jameslwilbur.com. I'm on Facebook at James L. Wilbur. And, of course, we got the Scroll of Thoth Tumblr, scrollthoth.tumblr.com. Thank you very much for being with us, Dave. It was a pleasure having you. If you hold on just a second, I'm going to take the show out, and then we can talk. Music provided by Shoebox Recordings. The intro was a selection from Journey by Coben, and this is Hair Dye by East Coast. Everyone have a good day.